Hey guys, what's up? This is Frank from MTG Unlimited, and today I got another standard deck tech for you guys. Today I'll be doing a Naya Midrange deck, and I was kind of thinking of decks that aren't going to rotate in the next couple weeks, and this one kind of stuck out to me above the others, and I think it's a very interesting deck. It's got a lot of the best cards from Theros block, and I think it's really interesting. So, as you can see on the screen, Elvish Mystic, Sylvan Caryatid and Courser Crucifix are all like main components of the deck. They're all very good for ramping, as you all know. Some of the best cards from Theros block, and they really help with mana fixing altogether. And I don't think there's a ton of explanation that needs to happen there. They're just great creatures for this deck. And then, as you can see, Fleecemane Lion is a 4 of. I really like Fleecemane Lion. He's very powerful. 3/3 for 2 already is pretty crazy, but when you throw in his monstrous ability, it can get absolutely ridiculous. If you're able to monstrous him, it just gets crazy, and your opponent really can't do anything about it unless they board wipe. And if you're in a matchup against another deck similar to this, an aggro deck, and there's really nothing they can do about Fleecemane Lion. It's a 4/4 that's swinging in. It's got indestructible and hexproof, so it's a very powerful creature on its own, and I really like playing it as a 4 of. And then next you can see 4 of Polakranos World Eater. And Polakranos, as you all probably know as well, is another very powerful card. A 4 mana 5/5, again, very powerful, but his monstrous ability makes him even bigger, and I've seen people monstrous him for 10 or more, and it can get absolutely ridiculous. And Polakranos is just a fantastic creature. He swings in for tons of damage, and he can also destroy quite a few creatures on his own if you monstrous him for enough mana. So I really like playing him. And then next you can see Scavenging Ooze. Scavenging Ooze sadly is rotating. It's the only card in this deck that is rotating, and it's only a 2 of, too, and I really like it. I'm sure there will be something in cons that we can replace as a 2 of slot in the deck, and I think it'll be really interesting. Um, so Scavenging Ooze, obviously, quite a few creatures are going to die in this deck. You play a lot of creatures in this deck, and also there's a lot of just aggro decks in the format right now, and Scavenging Ooze really eats up the graveyard very well against like dredge decks and Golgari decks, things like that. And there's generally a lot of gas for him in graveyards, whether it's yours or your opponent's. So he ends up gaining you a lot of life and getting big on his own and able to swing for a lot of damage. The next creature I'll talk about, Stormbreath Dragon. It's one of the only red cards in this deck, and it's pretty obvious why it's in this deck. 5 mana, 4/4 flying with haste, and pro white is pretty ridiculous in of itself. And I really like Stormbreath Dragon, and his monstrous ability, again, very crazy. You can make him a 7/7, and I think he's a great card for this deck. He basically gets 4 damage through no matter what. Like, your opponent generally isn't going to have an instant speed reaction to Stormbreath Dragon coming down on your turn, and he's going to get 4 damage through pretty much no matter what. There's not a lot of flyers in the format, and he's very powerful. You can play him on turns 3 or 4, depending on how well you were able to ramp in the early turns, and he's, again, very, very fantastic. So one of the only enchantments in the deck, Banishing Light, it's a 4 of. It's kind of a staple in Standard right now. It's really good for spot removal. It takes out everything in the format from planeswalkers to creatures to enchantments, artifacts. It takes out a lot of stuff. And it's very good against like the new Jund Planeswalkers deck that's emerging. You can just basically banishing like their planeswalkers the turn after they play them, and they don't get a lot of value for it. They spend a lot of mana on the planeswalkers, and then their planeswalkers just killed instantly, or removed from the game rather. So that's just one of the only removal spells in the deck, and it's very good. So planeswalkers now. We're playing Ajani, Mentor of Heroes, as a 1 of. He's a very good planeswalker. He's got interesting combos with many of the cards in the format right now. His +1 abilities are both very good. They help buff up your creatures and that kind of thing. And he's a very interesting planeswalker. If you can get to his ultimate, you basically win. I mean, gaining 100 life is like ridiculous, and your opponent has to have a response to Ajani. Otherwise, you're gonna get his ultimate off and just win the game. So he's he's good as a one of. I think he's fairly inconsistent, and there is a lot of Planeswalker removal in the format right now, so that's why I'm only playing him as a one of. Next, you can see two Elspeth Suns champions, and Elspeth is a very fantastic Planeswalker. A lot of mana, 6 mana, but I think it's worth it. +1 to get out 3 soldiers is pretty ridiculous. You get a lot of blockers and things like that. And then her -3 is also very good. You basically board wipe all creatures with power 4 or greater. It's This deck does play quite a few creatures with power 4 or greater. However, there's a lot of other decks in the format that play similar power creatures, and sometimes it is necessary to do that depending on your board state and your opponent's board state. And then her ultimate obviously is pretty ridiculous. By this point, she's put out tons of soldiers, and getting her ultimate off just gives them all +2/+2 in flying, which just wins games in of itself. Pretty ridiculous. Next, you can see another great Planeswalker in the format. He recently spiked, and for good reason too, Xenagos the Reveler. He is absolutely fantastic. I like using him for his 0 ability just to get out satyrs. I really like how the satyrs have haste. I think it's very powerful actually. And you can get out a lot of 2/2s. He also helps make a ton of mana for your deck, which is also very good, especially with things like Polokranos, where you're gonna want to be monstrosing him for a lot of counters, and he obviously helps with that quite a bit. And his ultimate obviously is very good as well. I'm playing him as a 3 of. He's a great Planeswalker. I think he fits the best in the deck. Now for the mana base. We're playing 4 Mana Confluences, pretty self-explanatory, 3-color deck. It really needs the Mana Confluence to help for the mana fixing. And then I'm playing 4 of each of the Scrylands. Also pretty self-explanatory. They're played in almost all standard decks in the format. They're very good for standard. And then I'm playing 8 basics, just to fill in for Shocklands rotating. I figured there's really no point in putting Shocklands in the deck just because they are going to rotate in literally like 2 weeks. So that's why there's no Shocklands there. And yeah, so that's the whole deck. This deck is a very aggressive deck, and it just spits out tons of creatures. It's very hard for opponents to deal with at times, and I think it's a really fun deck to play. I hope you like it too. If you have any suggestions, just post in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If you could please like or subscribe, tell your friends about our channel. Thanks so much, guys.